Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're headed to Kenya.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it should be interesting. We've got a ton of articles from Kenyans.co.k and Typhleo Nation and a few from Nairobi Wire, Capital FM, and a couple other sources as well.
Wow, that's a lot of material.
It is. So get ready for some political intrigue, a touch of tech, and maybe even some Kenyan humor.
It sounds like fun.
It is. It really is. It's fascinating how all these different stories combine to paint a picture of what's going on in Kenya right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so let's dive in and we'll start with the political scene. And things have been a little bit, explosive, to say the least.
Definitely.
Remember Rigathi Gachagua?
Yeah, he was the deputy president, right?
That's him. Well, he was impeached this week.
Wow, really?
It happens so fast. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
That is really fast. That's unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally unprecedented. And it all happened within a week, despite the fact that Gachagua's legal team was trying every possible way to stop it. He even claimed that the judges assigned to his case were biased against him.
Oh, wow.
And then there are the allegations he made. I mean, he's pointing fingers at President Ruto and the National Intelligence Service.
What?
Yeah, saying that they tried to poison him.
No way.
Not once, but twice.
Oh, my gosh.
And he also mentioned that his hotel room in Kisumu was bugged.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild. And the thing is, the government hasn't even responded to any of this.
So they're just ignoring it.
It seems that way. And Gachagua's even making these emotional pleas, talking about his safety and his family's safety.
It paints a pretty scary picture.
It really does. It's like a whole political thriller unfolding right in front of us.
Absolutely.
So now we've got this new guy, Kithure Kindiki,
Oh.
who's stepping in as the new deputy president.
Okay.
But even that's not a simple transition.
Oh, really? How come?
Well, there's all this legal stuff preventing Kindiki from being sworn in right away.
I see.
So that's why we had this kind of unusual situation at the Mashuja Day celebrations.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, with this deputy president-elect. It's not something you see every day.
And it's for people who aren't familiar with Kenya,
Yeah.
Mashuja Day is a big deal, right? It's a national holiday to celebrate heroes.
Exactly. It's a really important day in Kenya. But anyway, back to this whole political drama.
Okay.
President Ruto used his Mashuja Day speech to condemn tribalism and favoritism.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it's such a contrast to what Gachagua was all about. He was always pushing for those Mount Kenya interests.
Which means giving benefits to people from that specific region.
Exactly. So it's like Ruto's trying to distance himself from that whole approach.
That makes you think.
And then to make things even more complicated, there's this guy Moses Kuria.
Who's that?
He's a big name in Kenyan politics. And he's saying that Martha Karua, remember her from the last election. She actually warned Gachagua about Ruto, way back when.
Really?
Yeah, basically telling him that Ruto wasn't trustworthy.
Oh, wow. So it's like a soap opera or something.
It really is. All these shifting alliances and secret warnings, it's never a dull moment in Kenyan politics.
And this is just the beginning.
It is. But hold on, there's more. We also came across a really sad story from Wajir County.
Okay, what happened?
Remember the missing MCA, Yussuf Hussein Ahmed?
Oh, yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, well, tragically, they found him dead.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the details are pretty disturbing.
Really?
Yeah, his body was mutilated.
Oh, my gosh.
It sparked outrage in Wajir, and understandably so.
Of course.
And his family's really upset. They're saying that the police didn't do enough to find him.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's just a really tragic situation.
It is.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit.
Sure.
We also found a story about the deportation of 4 Turkish nationals.
Turkish national.
Yeah, apparently they were linked to this thing called the Gulen movement.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but basically it's a controversial deportation.
Why is it controversial?
Well, there are these allegations that they were actually abducted in Nairobi just days before they were deported.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a really sensitive situation.
Yeah.
The government's trying to balance their commitment to refugee rights with taking action against potential security threats.
I see.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It is for sure.
Okay, let's move on to something a little more fun.
Okay, good.
Tech time.
Yay.
So Nairobi now has its first matatu. You know those public transport vehicles you see everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
Well, now one of them has Starlink satellite internet.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So now you can have high-speed internet while you're commuting.
That's so cool. Imagine that.
It is pretty cool, right?
Definitely.
Okay, and in other news, that might actually affect everyday Kenyans.
Okay.
We've got the Kenya National Union of Teachers. They're called KNUT.
Okay.
And they're pushing for changes in how teacher pensions are paid out.
What's wrong with the current system?
Well, there have been a lot of delays, And a lot of retired teachers are facing some serious financial hardship because of it.
Oh, no. So Kennedy's trying to streamline things and make sure those retired teachers get paid on time.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it is. Sounds like Kenya's facing all sorts of different challenges.
It really is, but there's also this spirit of innovation and a drive to make things better.
I can see that.
And we're going to explore that more in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it. You know, it's amazing to see how these stories from Kenya kind of connect to what's happening in the rest of the world.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where are we going now?
Well, let's hop over to Zambia for a minute.
Zambia, okay.
So the president there, he just fired 3 top judges.
Fired them.
Yeah, and the thing is, these judges had ruled against him in some election petitions. That doesn't sound good.
It's definitely raising some eyebrows. People are worried about political interference in the judiciary, you know?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. It makes you wonder about the future of democracy in Zambia.
Yeah, for sure. So what else is happening in Africa?
Unfortunately, we have another concerning story from Tanzania. Oh no, what happened?
A female opposition leader was abducted and assaulted.
Oh my gosh.
And this is the second time this has happened in just 2 months.
That's terrifying. What's the political climate like over there?
It's tense. There's a lot of anxiety about the possibility of violence, especially with elections coming up in 2025.
Yeah, I can see why people would be worried.
These attacks on opposition figures are creating a really scary atmosphere.
It's a reminder that democracy is fragile and that we need to protect people who speak truth to power.
Absolutely. Okay, ready for something a little more uplifting?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's talk about space for a bit.
I'm always up for some space news.
All right, so get this. Chinese researchers have developed lunar bricks.
Lunar bricks. What are those?
They're bricks made from simulated moon soil.
Wow. So what are they going to do with these moon bricks?
They're planning to use them to build a base on the moon.
A moon base? That's insane.
I know, right? They're even going to test these bricks on the Tianzhu 8 cargo spacecraft, which is headed to the Chinese space station.
It's amazing to think that we might actually have a base on the moon someday.
It is. It really shows you what humans are capable of when we put our minds to it.
But it's also important to remember that while we're reaching for the stars, there are still a lot of problems here on Earth.
Right. Like we saw in some of those other articles about Kenya.
Exactly. Some people are facing some really tough challenges.
Like that heartbreaking story about the young woman in Thika who was murdered.
Oh, yeah. That was just awful. She was only 23 years old.
I know. It's just tragic. The police think her ex-boyfriend might be responsible, but they're still investigating.
It's a reminder that violence against women is a global problem.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to keep fighting against.
Definitely. Okay, so there was also that story about the demolition in Kirinyaga County.
Oh, right, where they evicted all those families.
Yeah, over 200 families lost their homes.
It happened on land owned by the Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, or KLRO.
And people are pretty upset about it.
They are. A lot of people are questioning whether the evictions were even legal.
It sounds like a really complicated situation.
It is. There's tension between the need for development and the rights of these communities.
It's a tough balance to strike.
For sure.
So with everything that's going on, the Gachagua impeachment, the evictions, it seems like there's a lot of soul-searching happening in Kenya right now.
I think you're right. People are trying to figure out what all of this means for the future of the country.
There was that article in Taifaleo Nation that said Gachagua's downfall was because he was politically naive.
Yeah. And another article talked about the concerns of Kenyans who live abroad.
They're worried about the state of democracy in Kenya.
It's a critical moment for the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've seen political intrigue, tragic losses, controversial evictions. It's been a whirlwind.
It has. But even amidst all the chaos, there are signs of hope and progress.
That's what's so interesting about this deep dive. We get to see the whole picture.
The good and the bad, the triumphs and the struggles, it's all part of the human experience.
You know, it's really kind of crazy how everything seems connected.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, like Gachagua's impeachment, and then those Turkish nationals being deported, and even the MCA's murder in Wajir. It's like, it's all pointing to the same underlying thing.
Like what?
Like this tension, this power struggle that's happening all over Kenya.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like we're peeling back the layers and seeing all these connections.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that even things that seem kind of random can have these big ripple effects.
Oh, totally. Like what happens in Kenya doesn't stay in Kenya. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get.
Like if there's political instability in Kenya, it could affect trade or regional security or even like global migration patterns. It's all connected.
So what does this all mean for the average person?
Well, for one thing, it's just a reminder that we're all part of this global community, whether we realize it or not. What happens in one part of the world can affect us all.
That's true.
And these stories from Kenya, they give us a glimpse into the human experience, you know?
Yeah, I see that.
It's like the struggle for power, the search for justice, the challenges of change. These are things that we all deal with no matter where we live.
Right. It's like a microcosm of the world in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to learn about these things,
Yeah.
to try to understand what's happening and why.
It makes you think about things differently.
It does, and it makes you appreciate the value of critical thinking.
Especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information.
It's easy to get overwhelmed and just focus on the headlines, you know?
Yeah.
But a deep dive like this, it forces us to slow down and think critically and connect the dots.
It gives you a whole new perspective.
It does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, is there one big idea we can leave our listeners with?
That's a good question. What do you think?
Well, one thing that kept coming up for me was this tension between individual ambition and the collective good.
Yeah, I see that.
Like you see it in politicians who want power and businesses that want profits and individuals who want a better life for themselves.
It's like a constant battle.
It's this question of how do we balance our own needs and desires with the needs of the community and the world around us?
That's a big question.
It is, and it's one that we all need to think about. So as you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on this tension. How does it show up in your own life?
That's a great point. It's something we can all think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe by thinking about it, we can start to find ways to bridge that gap between individual ambition and the collective good.
That would be amazing.
It would. It's all about working together to create a more just and equitable world.
It's been a really eye-opening deep dive.
I agree. It's been a pleasure exploring these stories with you.
And with our listeners. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.